Imagine if just you had one of those powers. If you could see into people and see through their smiling mask and understood what's really going on, never appear too perfect. You have to know yourself. You have to know who you are. We humans only do things that are pleasurable, right? We're attracted to the things that give us pleasure, and we refrain from things that give us pain. Failure is a good thing. Failure teaches you what your limitations are. There are no shortcuts in this life. You don't want to appeal to people's love, to the fact that they like you. You want to appeal to the fact that they need you. Because if they love you, love is a very tenuous emotion. In fact, it doesn't work very well in the work situation. It causes all kinds of problems. They'll get rid of you tomorrow, even though they like you. But if they need you, it's like pulling out all of these roots of a plant to get rid of you. It's going to cause all kinds of damage all over the place. They need you and they can't get rid of you. So you need to make sure that your position in a company, in life in general, you're the only person who can do that. So let's say you're in a corporation, you kind of don't just depend on one person. You just aren't just necessary to the boss, but you spread yourself out to 3 or 4 different networks. You get a sense of how the whole company is functioning. You have your roots in this place, in this place, in this place. So you have more knowledge. It's kind of spread around. And to get rid of you is going to cause a lot of problems because you're not only involved here, but you're involved here, here, and here. And you have knowledge that nobody else has. So you want to have a kind of knowledge and skill base that makes you unique. And that means just don't depend on one skill, but have several skills, and don't be afraid to do that. That's, I think, is probably the key strategy here. But when it comes to if you're an entrepreneur, it's the same dynamic for an entrepreneur. It's the same dynamic for me. The way you make yourself necessary and others dependent on you is to be the only person who can do this job. You are so unique. There's only one Elon Musk, there's only one Steve Jobs, right? They're irreplaceable. They're not afraid to be themselves, have their own style. That's what secures their position. So if I wrote books like everybody else, I wouldn't have that position of power. But because I'm the only one, for better or for worse, who can write books the way I do, I have secured a position in the publishing world. So it's a law that applies everywhere.
Yeah.
In my book, Mastery, I call it knowing your life's task. This was what you were meant to accomplish in life. And you're very firm about it and you feel very confident about it. And so when people come like that editor did and tell me that you shouldn't be a writer, you're able to deflect it because you have a dream and nothing will get you to sidetrack from that dream. But also having a sense of accomplishment. Not that you're a con artist. You've actually accomplished A, B, and C in life. Right? So if people come and attack me, I don't really care because I have this that I can always fall back on. I have a book that sold 2 million copies. How many people can say that? I don't care, bring it on. I'm fine with that. But the one other thing I would say about that is that you want to, in the case for all people of power and any position you are in life, I have a law in the 48 Laws of Power called never appear too perfect. And the danger in the world today is, the number one danger is envy. We live in a time of social media, etc., where it's massive envy, where we know what everybody else is doing in life, and we don't like to admit that we're envious, so we attack people passive-aggressively. We subvert them, we try and throw obstacles in their way. We criticize them when in fact we envy them. And the strategy there is to learn how to deflect envy. So if you're Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, you have to have some humor, you have to have some self-deprecating humor. You have to take the criticism that comes and kind of laugh at it and go along with it so that you don't appear all stiff and rigid and defensive. You have to know your strengths and play to your strengths. So if I tried to show this kind of confidence and boldness on a basketball court, I'd be laughed off. If I tried to show it with my artwork and my painting and my doodling, I wouldn't be able to pull it off. But I know that I have one thing that I'm strong at. It's with words and language and writing. And so I can pull off being bold because I feel inside myself that inner confidence. You have to almost deceive yourself that you can accomplish this. So I can go on the list through classic introverts have been incredibly successful Albert Einstein was a terrible introvert, even though he seems like he's sort of this comic person who's good with people. He was terrible, very awkward and timid, but he knew one thing that he was so good at, and he pushed on it and pushed on it and pushed on it. And when it came to physics and relativity, there was nobody else who could argue with him. So play to your strength, play to what you know, what you're good at, what you've accomplished. And even the worst introvert in the world, like myself, can exude that kind of boldness. You have to know yourself, you have to know who you are, and you have to do some searching in there. So the passion thing, it's kind of a cliche in a way. I want you to look at the things that you were drawn to when you were 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. I do consulting work with a lot of people who are kind of confused about what I call your life's task, and we go through a process. You want to see something that attracted you here so deeply you can't even put it into words. Because the way the human brain works is that you don't learn things with any kind of intensity unless your emotions are deeply, deeply engaged, unless you're excited by the subject, right? And so if you're kind of in a field that is because of the money or because it kind of half interests you, you're not going to be learning, you're not going to have that intensity of focus that all successful people have. There's a kind of a level that you hit where the work is exactly what you were meant to do. It's what excites you, it's what your skill level, you're up to the challenge, or maybe it's a little above you, and it brings out the best in you. And you want to find out what that field is or what that subject is. And so once you find it, everything else will fall into place. So for me, I knew it was writing. I just couldn't figure out which writing form of it, but once it occurred, everything else just fell into place for me. At the end of a day of working hard, you feel kind of a satisfaction that you got a lot accomplished. At the end of your life, when you feel like you've worked hard and you've kind of done what you were supposed to do, you feel like you had a blessed life. And the reverse of that, which he doesn't discuss, is it's the end of your life, you're in your 60s or 70s, and you're reflecting back about all your missed potential. That is true hell. If you give all of your effort, if you work really hard and you put all of your focus into it, and you've done, like you wrote a book with lots of research, and you know it's a good book, and yet it only sells 2,000 copies, you can feel a bit upset about it. You're going to be upset about it, no doubt, but you're going to bounce back because you knew that you put in all the effort. And you know, failure is a good thing. Failure teaches you what your limitations are. Because if you go through life and you have success after success, you're never learning. And then you're gonna have a much worse downfall because you're gonna get grandiose. So failure is a good thing as long as you put in the effort, as long as you did the job the best you could. Okay, it didn't sell so much. I can learn from it and I can go on to the next project. Because if that failure defeats you inside, then you're done. Because you're never gonna recover your confidence. Your next effort's gonna be even more, half-assed, etc. It all comes from within. So when you have that failure, learn from it and put yourself in a position where you're ready to bounce off to the next project.
Yeah.
My belief are there are no shortcuts in this life. You have to be able to put in the work, you have to be able to fail, you have to try again, you have to go through an apprenticeship phase, you have to try and get a mentor, you have to learn. Then maybe you can become creative, and here's how you become creative. And once you reach that point where all of your knowledge and skill reaches that creativity mastery level, the game will flow and it'll be easy and you'll have a great life. We humans only do things that are pleasurable, right? We're attracted to the things that give us pleasure, and we refrain from things that give us pain. But how do we define pleasure? For most people, particularly young, it's instant. I want things that are quick. I want to get that jolt from a 2-hour movie or from a video game or maybe from a week's worth of work. But real pleasure, fulfillment, comes from something much longer. So when you reach a point where you're 30 years old, you've been serious, you've learned all these skills, you've gone to school, but you've tried different jobs, and now you're ready to start your own business, and you have that level of, wow, I've done all these great things, that is a much greater pleasure and thrill that you'll ever have in life than from something immediate. So think of your sense of pleasure, draw it out to 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, have a plan. So when you reach a point where you actually realize your dreams, that is the ultimate high you can ever have. Reaching a point of mastery and creativity is the most ecstatic thing. It's a peak experience, to use Maslow's terms. It's worth going through all the pain. To be able to look at yourself with a degree of honesty and say, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. To be able to look at people and understand some of who they are and not project onto them your own emotions and not see into them what you want to see into them, but who Brian Elliott actually is. A process of kind of empathy and this sort of social skills that we can develop, and the ability to see the world as it is. These are the trends happening in the world. This is the future of my career. This is where the world is going. You have that kind of realistic attitude, it's like a sharp diamond. It'll cut through anything. You imagine if just you had one of those powers, if you could see into people and see through their smiling masks and understood what's really going on, imagine the power you would have. It'd be amazing. So the fact that I have this insane attraction to words is genetic. I'm sure of it. The way your brain is wired, there's one kind of set of intelligence that you're attracted to. It could be math, it could be kinetics and movement, it could be patterns, and which will lead to like music, etc. But those are genetic, no doubt about that. But then nurture plays an incredibly important part. Just think of the fact that you're 1 year old. Do you know how vulnerable and what a sponge you were when you were that young? Yeah. Your whole life depended on one or two figures. You were paying such deep attention. Do you know how the power that has on you? You're not aware to this day how you were formed in those first months of your life in a completely pre-verbal way. So they're both equally play a role. So people who emphasize one or the other, they're just foolish. Well, it all comes to, so I was talking about a realistic attitude, it all comes down to being able to see into yourself with a degree of clarity. So the great psychologist Abraham Maslow called it, I believe, impulse voices. And he says that when a child is 6, 8 months old, they have these impulse voices. They like this candy, they like this bit of food, and they hate that one. It's something inside of them, they know it, they're aware of it in a very primal, pre-verbal way, and so they choose this thing that they're going to eat. Right? We all have these voices, but then as we get older, we lose sense of them. We're not hearing them anymore because we're hearing teachers telling us this is what we're good at, this is what we should be. We're hearing friends, we're hearing the culture saying this is what's cool and what's not cool. By the time we're 16 years old, that impulse voice is drowned out by 100 other voices, and we don't know who we are anymore. And it's very depressing, and it's why people turn to drugs and alcohol and etc. They lose a sense of themselves, of who they are. And that is the worst thing that can happen to you. So it's a matter of self-awareness and going through a process. We talk about the need, patience of being able to look at yourself. And what I get people to do is we go through a process of journaling, and we dig deep and we say, these are the things I could see throughout my life that I love, that when they happen, when I hear about them, I get so excited. These are the things I hate. And I give them an example of myself. I know, for instance, if I open the internet or the New York Times or any newspaper, and there's an article about early humans from 80,000 years ago, I have to read that article. I am so obsessed with our origins. It's been that way since I was 4 years old. That's the impulse voice. And on the other hand, I hate working for people. I hate political games. I hate the feeling that I have to court this incompetent buffoon who's my boss. That's another impulse voice that's now sending you have to be an entrepreneur, Robert.